So Kevin McKidd.
Yeah, Kevin McKidd, love Kevin McKidd. Funny you should bring him up.
Funny we should be talking about
That's funny
Kevin
about that.
McKidd.
It's weird.
There's a lot more to Kevin McKidd than meets the eye, I think, don't you?
I totally do. I think that most people think of him as Owen Hunt. If they don't think of him from Rome, and they don't think of him from his other roles, they hopefully think of him now as Dr. Owen Hunt.
I hope so.
Who's very, that has post-traumatic stress from his war days, is very intently focused, slightly humorless.
A little bit of a dark soul.
A little bit of a dark soul, I'd say, like very dark and twisty. And what is amazing is Kevin McKidd is very different than Dr. Owen Hunt, which just tells us what a great actor he is. Because if you get to know Kevin McKidd,
you'll discover some surprising things.
Some very surprising things.
For fame and for fortune, I wandered the earth. And now I've come back to the land of my birth. I brought back my treasures, but only to find they're less than the pleasures I first left behind. Welcome to Elgin, in the county of Moray, in the north of Scotland, the town where I grew up. It is the week between Christmas and New Year's, or Hogmanay, as we call it. I live in Los Angeles, and I yearn for my hometown and my home area, so I decided to go back this Christmas break to where I'm from and revisit some of the places from my past. I went back to a distillery that I used to work at called Macallan. I went back to my old school, the SEAFIELD Primary School, where I did my first play. I went to the Elgin Town Hall, where I then did more theatre. Then finally we hired a house in the Highlands near my hometown to record an album and bring a whole bunch of my friends and family together. And we had fun and recorded and played and ate together.
Badgie, bring him wheel, and for Badgie him to slay. He was a broad gallant, and he played at the ring.
The first inspiration for recording old Scottish folk songs was about 2 years ago. We had a gathering of people one night, and it turned into this very sort of amazing musical night.
We set up 2 music rooms. One was a folk music room and the other was a sort of a live rock room. And by the end of the night, everyone had gravitated towards the folk room, and we discovered there was so much talent in the room, and it sounded so beautiful that we had the idea, well, why don't we do this again someday, but this time record it.
This really felt like a week where I really felt the roots of my upbringing. You know, my grandfather, Geordie Runcie, he sang all these songs. He was a famous sort of carouser and storyteller and sort of real character of the town. I always vowed when I was in my 20s to sort of record him before he died, and then I didn't get a chance because I was so kind of wrapped up in my career and my own thing and having kids, and I always regret that. So I think the initial spark of the idea was to kind of pay that back.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I mean, ideally, we hope to have recorded about 20 songs, out of which we maybe will get 12 that will really stand up.
Which would be a really pretty album, I think.
Yeah,
so,
and if we can get that, then we can put an album together.
Yeah.
Kevin's a patron of Save the Children,
so we're hoping we might do it.
So the whole idea is that this would go out for charity for Save the Children.
Hero east and hero west, hero through South Bogio, until he came to a wide open field. It was there that he spied his lady. Oh, why did you leave your house and your land? Why did you leave your money?
In between the recording sessions, I decided that I wanted to somehow go back and revisit all my old stomping grounds and all the places that had resonance for me as a little boy. This is my first school that I went to. This is where I got my acting bug on the stage in the assembly hall here at SEAFIELD Primary School. From like age 7 or 8, I started acting here. This stage in this hall, this assembly hall. In fact, the whole school hasn't changed one bit, and it smells exactly the same as when I went here. I've not been back here in probably, I don't know how long, maybe probably 30 years, maybe. Yeah. Me and my brother, we're from a pretty rough area, kind of rough area of Elgin.
There's the pupils we staff.
So you can see your trouble there.
Aye.
You will not get it wrong again. I was like... And we'd get in a lot of trouble and all this kind of stuff. And I do think still to this day that the acting sort of got me in the right path as far as staying out of the trouble, all that stuff that young boys do. This is the chair that basically I sat on for all the bad deeds that I did at this school before acting sorted me out and put me on the straight and narrow. So if I hadn't been for acting, I probably would have been in this chair all the time. So here we are at the Elgin Town Hall now. This is where I did one of my first big performances as a teenager, and we're meeting the Out the Darkness Theatre Company artistic director. And this is my mum, who's the administrator. Hiya.
How are you?
How you doing? All right?
Good to see you. It's been a long time.
Out of the Darkness Theatre Company has been in existence for about 12 years now. Its main focus is working with young people with learning difficulties. I was asked to be the patron about 8-9 years ago, so I just kind of try and support them as much as I can, really, because I think they do brilliant work. And then I did loads of plays right through my childhood here. You know, I was never off this stage. It's got a lot of fond memories for me, this place, you know, because it was definitely where I think the spark sort of lit for me, and I found my sea legs, as it were. Here we are at Macallan Distillery. I worked here when I was 17 years old. It's kind of a trip down memory lane for me, so I'll show you around it and let you see what the whiskey industry is in Scotland and how it shaped me as a young man. One of the great things about the week for me was getting to spend time with my dad, Neil, and my brother, Steve. It was just nice to, you know, be back with my family. I worked here twice, actually, and we used to build those things over there called the mash tuns. And then a couple of years after that, I worked for another company in Elgin called the Lumsdens, who are coppersmiths, and we built the Swan Necks distills over there. A career working in the distilleries in the north of Scotland is a very good career. So I kind of toyed with the idea of becoming a stillman, or somebody who worked in the whiskey industry, or a coppersmith. Is it in there just now?
Just in that wee bit there, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Smell that. So this, being back here for me is, it's just weird because the smell and just being here reminds me of those kind of formative years when I was 17, 18 and wondering what I was going to do with my life. I probably took the right path in the end, but it's just great being back. I feel like we've got an embarrassment of riches. You know, this could be me up here in a house with a tape recorder and my pals and a 12-pack of beer, you know. And what we've got is, you know, some high-end professionals who really know their business and the music business. And it's kind of bizarre that it came together because it's very grassroots.
And they approached me and said, right, we want to do a sort of modern take on traditional Scottish folk tunes. And they said, well, you know, Nick, you might be the man to help produce the thing and give it a bit of a modern edge and stuff. So they sort of drafted me in on the whole project, and here we are.
Yeah. Sometimes the problem with Scottish folk music is it just gets a little bit repetitive and too much into itself. But at the same time, there's so much beautiful stuff there in terms of the songs and the lyrics. And
then straight into the... Actually, it's a
like
good point, because what I've discovered is that these melodies, they've lasted for, what, 300-400 years, some of them maybe even longer, and actually that, you know, they're such strong tunes that you can do almost anything behind them in a way, that the melodies can handle it, and actually, so it's quite fun.
went on his room, and at every song he would tempt on a woman, and so has tempted me, and I'll die if
I think Kevin gets really homesick and wanted to do something really Scottish.
I haven't seen him for a long, long time. It's really good to hear him still playing and singing, but particularly tapping into his sort of roots, his Scottish roots and his local roots. That's been really nice. That's been really good, and it's good to see that he's still involved with that. And he's came out. I was really impressed with his playing, I have to say, with his guitar playing and his singing. It's really good.
He's got a great voice. I was actually pleasantly surprised at how good a musician he is, and I don't think he gives himself credit for being, you know, so talented, actually. If I get now my love, oh, Hannah.
The week was one of the best weeks of my life, I think. You know, there was a lot of joy, there was a lot of laughter. It was hard work, it was a hard week, but a very magical week. We also have fun, you know, and have a massive New Year's Hogmanay party. It was such an unusual event to get a chance to suddenly act like kids again and, you know, put life to one side a little bit and just play music. So it was kind of like, it was almost like a reality TV show set in the Highlands, you know. Everybody was meant to do their own dishes, but nobody did, and my mum came in and shouted at everyone, you know, because people weren't pulling their weight in the house.
If you have all the furniture back tonight, the way, everything back, up in the bedroom.
Definitely, Mum. Yeah, yes. That's good. These songs are important because it really is a snapshot into my past and my ancestors. So it's an album that's going to feel, hopefully, different to your standard Scottish music album. You know, it's much more an album of friends and memories and that sense of local spirit.
For fame and for fortune, I wandered the earth. Now I've come back to the land of my birth. I brought back my treasures, but only to find that less than the pleasures I first left behind. For these are my mountains, this is my glen, the praise of my childhood, know me again. No lands ever claim me, far I do roam. These are my mountains, I'm going home. From these are my mountains, and I'm going